All right, our next exercise in CSS, cascading style sheets, writing some code in CSS. We're going to look at more properties and a little bit about different ways to use them. There's a handout linked up on Google Classroom that looks like this. Here's what's involved in today's assignment. I've provided some code for you. I'll show you that in a minute. You're going to have to write rule sets for H1, H3. That's two different kinds of headings, H1 headings to H3 headings. UL, unordered list, images, and paragraphs. So there are 5 rule sets you're going to have to write. And I want you to use these properties. I've got them listed right here, and you're going to see them in action in my little demo that I'm about to do here. You could also, if you want to, use some things. I wound up with background color on here twice. That's okay. But you could use things that we used in the previous lesson if you want to, but what you got to use these. And you got to write rule sets for these 5 things right up here. All right, so let's get over to work here. You're going to have some code. I'm going to provide you some code that looks like this. I'm going to pull this window over so we can see this a little bit better. It's about sharks. If you look at the HTML, we've got some headings going on. We've got some paragraphs going on. We have some little unordered lists going on. We have images on here. And it's all about different kinds of sharks, and you can look through that and you can read as much of it as you want, right? It's interesting stuff. Okay. You don't really have to do anything to the HTML. Once again, on this assignment, your work is going to happen on the CSS page, on the style.css. So make sure you click over there. Remember that they are linked together because of this guy right up here. So I'm going to go over to style.css. And another thing is I don't know if you need to pull up a page that has color names on it. If you feel like that's helpful, do it. Or you can just use basic colors like red, green, blue, yellow, orange, purple. Those all work. So it depends on what you want. It's up to you. All right, let's get back to work here. On this code, I have to remix it. All right, you're going to have to remix it as well. So you'll have to click remix. And I like to click rename, and I might just call this CSS to movie demo. I'm just going to change the name of it, right? I'm recording this movie, and so I'm just going to call it that, CSS2 movie demo. Great. And again, I'm going to pull this dividing line over so we can see a little bit better. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a change in on the body the rule set for the body. I'm going to go ahead and make a change on that. I'm just going to change that to cadet blue for the background. And you'll see an immediate change there in the background color. It's cadet blue. All right, so let's go on. And you don't have to use the same colors as me, and you don't have to do everything the same way as me, but I'm going to show you some things, and let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to write a rule for H1s, and remember how this works. I just put H1. I start a set of curly brackets. I press enter a couple of times. I close that set of curly brackets, and then I come back here and I put in all of the things that I want to do to H1 headings. All right, well, color is always fun, right? So I'm going to do color, and I'm going to use a dark slate blue here. And it's still, I typed enough of it that code.org has found it, so I'm going to do that. And always put a semicolon at the end of the sentence. All right, so my H1 heading that says Shark Week is now dark slate blue. I'll press enter right there. Now here's a new one for today. I'm going to do font-family and put a colon in there. And then again, you'll have some choices. And if you were to do a web search for web-safe fonts, you would see a lot of names of fonts that you could probably use here. You could plug them in. I'm just going to kind of go with these categories that code.org offers to me. Like, for example, if I click monospace, and I'm looking over there at Shark Week, and it changed the way it looks for sure, right? Or maybe I don't want monospace. Maybe I want to go cursive. Boom. And now if I look over there at Shark Week, it looks different. Right? It's not a particular font, but on every computer it might look a little bit different, but it found something that kind of fits that category a little bit. Now actually I think what I'm going to plug in here is fantasy, semicolon, and I'm going to go with that. All right, so I'll use font-family as fantasy, and I'm going to use one that we did yesterday. I'm going to use text-align, and I'm going to center that, and I'll put a semicolon right there. So now my H1 heading is I've set it to dark slate blue. The font family is fantasy, and it is centered on the page. All right, let's move on. I'm going to move ahead. Another thing you have to write a rule for today is H3. So I'm going to put H3, start a set of curly brackets, close that set of curly brackets, and here we go, right? Color, colon, and I'm going to use a dark blue here, semicolon there. Always put a semicolon at the end of the line, like that's a pair. Color, dark blue. Color is the property, dark blue is the value. Always put a semicolon at the end of it. It's like the end of the sentence. You put a period at the end of a sentence, so in CSS, you put a semicolon at the end of a pair like that. All right, so color, colon, dark blue. What else? I'm going to do font. I'm going to do font dash family. I like playing with the font family, so I'm going to say font dash family. I want a colon there, and then I think what I'll do is the sans serif on this one. So I'll come down and I'll pick on sans serif, put a semicolon at the end of that. And then the other thing I might do with this is font dash, this goes back to one we did yesterday, font dash size, colon, I'm going to do 24px. Remember, font size is measured in pixels, put a semicolon there. And if you'll look over at where it says basking shark right here, it's dark blue, it's sans serif, and it's 24 pixels. Now that's also true for the name of every shark, because all of those are H3 headings. So every H3 heading in my page over here is now following those rules. They're dark blue, they are sans serif, and they are 24 pixels. All right, cool. So let's move on, right? I might close up a little bit of that empty white space there. Okay, so let's do, I'm going to do one more like in the demo, and then I'm going to switch over to one that's all done. So a new thing that we're looking at today is what about, I've got a list in there. I've got lists in here. So I'm going to put UL because they're unordered list. I'll start a set of curly brackets in that set of curly brackets, and I'll start plugging in the things I want. Now again, I'm going to do font dash family, and I'm going to go cursive this time, put a semicolon at the end of that. All right, and again, if you'll look at my little bulleted list, look what they look like. The font really did change. Now, it might not look exactly like that when you do it like at school or on your Chromebook. Kind of depends on what computer you're on. But the computer will interpret cursive and put in a font that it thinks kind of matches that category. All right, I'm going to change the color of that to white. All right, semicolon there. Now, and if you're looking over on the right, you're seeing my list kind of update here. Now, I'm going to play with background color on this. I think that's always kind of fun. So I'm going to go background dash color. And my background colors, I've been using this dark blue for some other things, so I'm kind of keeping it in the family there a little bit. I want to use that dark blue. Okay. Now, I'm going to come along here. This is where we're going to get into this border thing. We haven't talked about this yet. So you can play around with borders. I'm going to do border dash color and colon, and I'm going to make it like ivory, but you're not going to see a whole lot yet because I also need to do border dash style, and I'm going to make it, now when you do border dash style, you got a lot of choices here like dotted and double and groove and hidden, and play around with them, see what they do. But I'm just going to keep it kind of plain here, and I'm going to go solid dude. All right, so I'll put a semicolon at the end of that. Border style is solid. I'm going to do a border dash width. All right, and you could do medium, thick, thin, or you can do it in pixels. Like if I say 10px semicolon, well, let's bump that up a little bit so you can see a little bit more. 20px semicolon. Okay, I had to do a little refresh and save there to get it to respond, but I've got my border dash width set at 10 pixels, and so now you see what that looks like. And I'm going to throw in one more thing about the border here. I am going to do a border dash radius. Right, see, these are all things that you can set. And if you start typing the word border in your CSS, it's going to show you all these possibilities. And let's say I put a 10px radius on here, and if you look carefully at the borders of these lists, they just curved a little bit. They're rounded. They're not sharp corners anymore. And I don't know if you like it or not. That's that's where you make up your own mind. Do you like it? Do you not like it? You don't have to use a border radius. Well, it's part of this assignment, so you probably do kind of have to use a border radius. But when you're coding your own stuff, you don't have to, right? Today you have to because Mr. Arvin said so. All right, so I'm going to back up that a little bit. Now, you're starting to see, I wrote a rule for an H1 and an H3 and an unordered list, and so I'm getting some results over here. I'm not really done with the assignment, though. So what I'm going to do here is this kind of a fast forward here. Let's go to here. And I'm going to pull this dividing line over so we can look at that a little bit better and get my style.css up here. Okay, there we go. So now this is one that's done, right? All of the required elements have been done here. The H1 is written, the H3 is written, the UL is written. You might see some differences in what I did during the other part of the demo, but that's okay. Now here's the image thing. Here's an example. Look carefully with me at the image thing. I made a rule for IMG. That's the tag, right? So it's IMG, curly bracket. And what I did on mine was I just set border stuff. I said border-style, ridge. Border-width, 20 pixels. Border-color, red. Border-radius, 30 pixels. And you see the result that I got. I don't know if you'll like it or not, but that's how mine turned out. You can play around with all of the options and see what you can do that you like. That's the whole point of doing CSS, is trying to learn to code stuff in a way that you think it looks good. So you're looking right, and notice that if I roll this, all of the images get that style, right? Every image, everything that's marked with an IMG tag has a ridge, red, 20 pixel, rounded border because they're images. All right, and now the same thing with the paragraphs. I did actually several things to the paragraphs, and the paragraphs are like, let me park one right next to that code. Right there. Background color, light slate gray. Color of the text, ghost white. Font family, monospace. Font size, 14 pixels. Bordered style, border-style, solid. Border-color, black. You can see it right over here. Border-width, 5 pixels. Border-radius, 10 pixels. That gives it a little bit of a curved edge. Snuck one in on you. Padding. Padding gives it a little bit of, padding, right? Around the text before you hit the border. The text doesn't go right up next to the border when you throw in some padding. That one's not really on the assignment today, but we'll talk about padding more later. All right, so this is an example of one that's all done, all the way done, right? So this is I don't know exactly what yours is going to look like, but I want you to write. You've got to write a rule for H1s. You got to write a rule for H3s. You got to write a rule for ULs, unordered list. You got to write a rule for image, IMG, and you got to write a rule for paragraph. Now, does it have to have as much stuff on it as I did? Well, not necessarily, but you've got to meet these requirements right here. Rule sets for all 5. I just showed you that, and you got to work these puppies in here somewhere. They got to be in there somewhere, right? Okay, it's time for you to jump in and go to work. Let's give it a ride, Clyde.